Future Music.
Yo, what's up? Coming back at y'all with another video. If this is your first time here on this channel, I like to talk all things music production, like we're gonna get into today, which we're gonna be talking about my iPad music production setup for 2022. I haven't made one of these in quite some time. The last one I think I did was 2 years ago, so couple of things done changed, but I just wanted to keep the community updated on some of the things that I'm using. Before we get into the content, you could actually follow me on Instagram and TikTok at d._majormusic, as well as Twitter d.mme. So in this video, talking about my iPad Pro music production setup, think of it kind of like a part one of almost like a tour of my whole home studio here, as part two will kind of cover more so what I'm using to make beats on my Mac. So with this one, what I'm going to kind of get into is similar things as far as the first video, and I'm gonna leave the link in the description to the video that I did in 2020 on iPad music production. A lot of the things are still similar. So kind of like I did on my previous video, in this one, what I'm gonna go over is some of the apps and Midi controllers that I'm using to create beats here on iPad Pro, and also any other add-ons like adapters that you might need to make beats on your iPad. Now, as far as the iPad that I'm using the current version of the iPad Pro, which came out in, I believe, 2020, late 2020. I started making beats actually on the iPad Mini, the very first version of the iPad Mini, around 2014. And then from there, I got into the iPad Pro, the very first model, and then pretty much every other version of the iPad Pro I've had. So like the first generation, the third generation, and now in the current fifth generation of the iPad Pro. So the reason that I used the 12.9 model was when the iPad Pro first became a thing, I was like using mainly a iMac to do most of my beats on, and I wanted to get a little bit more portable at that point. So I saw value in using the 12.9 version of the iPad Pro, and also the fact that it had, now it's Thunderbolt 3, but back when it first was released, it was a Lightning port, then it was USB-C, and I like that they went to USB-C because it allowed me to be able to use external storage devices like hard drives, flash drives, and then also the majority of the adapters that you find out there that work for like the MacBook Pro or the MacBook Air will also work on your iPad. So that allowed me to, as far as like right now, my workflow even on the Mac has changed. As I said earlier, I used to use the iMac, and I use a MacBook Pro now, and then of course the 12.9 version of the iPad Pro. I think now pretty much all of the iPad models will be capable for music production. So the only thing that I would really say consider when going to purchase your iPad is how much storage do you want, because I wouldn't recommend anything less than 128 gigs for music production, even though like the base model iPad, I believe the entry storage model would be 64 gigs. I would still go with a 128 in that case, or if you can find anything even like 256, you would probably be getting to the Air at that point, but 256 storage is a really good starting point. Now I remember my iPad Air at that time was only like 16 gigs, and you couldn't really do much with that. I realized that very quickly, but after that, I progressively went from like 128 to 256, and currently I'm at 512 with the current model of the iPad Pro, because since then I've also taken up like video editing. Actually, I do a lot of my video editing on iPad Pro through LumaFusion, so I have to make a separate video on LumaFusion. But if you're a creator out there, especially again on iPad, don't sleep on LumaFusion. You can use it on the M1 Macs as well. So if you have an M1 Mac, it's something that you may want to check out. LumaFusion is going to be $24.99 in the App Store. There are several great videos out there. I actually want to shout out a creator who uses LumaFusion, and I watched a lot of his tutorials. His name is Switch to I. Check out his channel here on YouTube as well if you want to learn more about LumaFusion, but I definitely would recommend it for video editing because I've edited a lot of my YouTube videos. I've even done like music videos inside of LumaFusion. I love the workflow. It allows me to get going real quickly once I open it up. Back to the music production stuff. As far as what I'm using to create beats on the iPad, my go-to, and even more so now than back in 2020 when I did the original iPad music production video, is going to be Beatmaker 3. And that hasn't changed. In fact, as I was saying, it probably even more so than it was, for the simple fact that as far as like my own personal workflow, I've kind of narrowed down, generally speaking, what I use to make beats down to 3 main like apps or hardware, and one of those is going to be Machine. The second is going to be the MPC 1 and the MPC software on the Mac, and 3 will be Beatmaker 3. I still at times may open up like Korg Gadget, for example, to make beats on, because I like Korg Gadget. I'm not knocking it or anything like that. But as far as like the workflow that I've gotten into since then, I got mainly into using like even my MPC 1 in standalone mode, not so much with my Mac as much. I'm kind of getting into that now, to be honest, and I've been having an MPC 1 for almost 2 years now. But Beatmaker 3, one of the things that I like about Beatmaker 3, it's been out since 2017, and with Beatmaker 3, I know where everything is. For one, my workflow, I've kind of mastered that as far as, if I want to make beats from scratch, or if I want to do some sampling inside of Beatmaker 3. I know how to chop my samples real quick, and I just know where everything is. It's been 5 years at this point since Beatmaker 3 has been out. Whenever I go, like I went to Austin, for example, last weekend. While I was in Austin, all I took with me was my iPad Pro. And while I was in Austin, I really didn't have much time to make beats. It was kind of, more of a vacation for me and my girlfriend. But I had one morning, probably about 20 minutes or so, and I got a chance to knock out a beat just like that, because I knew where everything was, all my samples, the way things are arranged inside of Beatmaker 3. And it makes it real easy to just get going within a matter of minutes. Even when I'm using my iPad at work to make beats, I may only have 15 minutes here and there, or even like on my lunch break, I may have a limited amount of time. But more often than not, I'm likely to get something going on in Beatmaker 3, and then I'll just finish it once I get off of work. So that's what does it for me. But I did mention in there Korg Gadget. Now Beatmaker 3, I believe, is going to be $24.99, and sometimes you may be able to find that one on sale. Korg Gadget, I think that one is actually $49.99. The biggest like comparison I can kind of make for like Korg Gadget, it reminds me something of like Reason, if any of you use like propeller head Reason, as where Beatmaker, I think the sampler kind of reminds me of a MPC-like workflow, and just the way that you can arrange your tracks reminds me of something like Logic, for example. And then they also have scenes kind of like Machine does. So that's why I like Beatmaker. For me, my go-to again for creating beats on the iPad. But then you're gonna want to check out Korg Gadget. I've actually done videos on how to use both. I'll leave links to both of those here in the description as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm using in terms of MIDI controllers. Now, I have quite a few controllers that I use, generally speaking. I have the MPK Mini Play, which is also going to have its own internal sounds. I have the Arturia Mini Lab I still like to use. Now, I still have the Rolly Seaboard Block and the Lightpad M. I don't use it as often as I used to, mainly because One, it's a little difficult to play sometimes. Whenever you're just trying to create, you have to kind of go back and edit just because of the velocity. Sometimes it's off whenever you're trying to play notes, for example, in Beatmaker 3. Still, really great controller. One of the better Bluetooth Midi controllers that I've came across. I would definitely encourage you if you can still find one. I don't think Roly's making these as of right now. I do know they came out with the new versions of the C-board, but they haven't announced the actual C-board block yet. It's just going to be, I believe, the 49 key model. And also the same thing with the LightPad, the Roly LightPad M here, which they don't make these anymore. Now, I will say this about it. You know, it's kind of getting to a side topic here, but I liked actually using the LightPad M for a controller, like with the MPC software on my Mac. And I say that only because I use it with the MPC software sometimes, obviously, because you can't take the MPC one everywhere as a controller. Even sometimes I may even take like the MPK Mini when I'm making beats on my Mac to use in the MPC software, but I can actually route all 16 of the pads from the software to the LightPad M. So that's why I kind of like using the LightPad for the MPC software. So you may see me use it like that from time to time if I'm on the go. Now, as far as which one of these I prefer mostly, it's very tough. I like the MPK Mini Play. I've only been having that a couple of months, as I said before. Now, the thing I like about that one in comparison to the Mini Lab is it's going to be a tad bit more portable, as you can see. So if I took the MPK Mini and placed it on the Mini Lab, look how much bigger the Mini Lab is. So yeah, if I take a controller anywhere with me, like if I have limited space, the MPK is probably going to be my choice to take with me. Now, I will say the Arturia Mini Lab is not a bad controller. It just is a little bit bulky. So for travel, it's just something I want to give you a heads up on. If you don't mind carrying something a little bit bulky, definitely I would suggest it. I like it also for the kind of plug and play compatibility with a lot of its VSTs that I use on a Mac, like Pigments or Analog Lab, for example. Now, the Mini Lab is going to be $99, and I got this one off of sweetwater.com. And the Akai MPK Mini Play, this version is going to cost $149, and I also got this off of Sweetwater. And then they also sell just the MPK Mini. I believe that one is $129. Difference between the Mini and the Mini Play is the Mini Play is going to have its own internal sounds. Then you could also use it as a controller, as to where the MPK Mini is only going to be a controller with no internal sounds. Now, if you also use the MPC software, it's a plus. And if you don't, you could actually use the MPC Beats software, which is going to be free if you're getting into making beats. So you definitely would probably want to check that out if you're looking for something to make beats on. And as far as like the Mini Lab, I'm not saying that it wouldn't work with the MPC Beats software. You will still be able to use the Mini Lab with all the VSTs that I was mentioning earlier. I'm just saying, plug and play wise, the MPK Mini Play is better suited to use the MPC Beats software with. And as far as the Roly C-board block and the LightPad M, as I said earlier, Roly is no longer making these, so I don't know as far as support, or even if you can find these, if you can still find them anywhere, you may want to check it out. But I just want to give you a heads up as far as support. I'm not sure what they'll be able to offer in terms of support if you have one of these. I haven't had any issues with mine. I'm just saying simply, if you do, that could be an issue for you as far as getting support for these. Now, as far as adapters go, you definitely want to get yourself some kind of USB adapter that you can use that goes in via Thunderbolt or USB-C, whatever you're using there. But I have this adapter here, which is going to be made by Anchor. Now, they don't sell this exact one anymore. I bought this one like a couple of years ago, actually. So they have some new adapters up. You can find any of these USB-C adapters at a good price on Amazon. Now, one of the reasons that I went with this adapter is it does already have the SD card reader on it. And as I said earlier, I do a lot of my video editing in LumaFusion. So it just allows me to, especially given the fact that the iPad Pro has Thunderbolt 3 capabilities, so it's able to transfer read and write speeds a lot faster than the older USB-C models. So a lot of times I'm importing video that I shot on my Canon, which I'm shooting on now, to LumaFusion, and then I just get to editing. And then of course it's going to have the audio jack on it. Now I like this, having it on this adapter as well, because they do offer that separate audio adapter for any like USB-C or Thunderbolt devices that I think is like $10. But I don't like using that one only because it doesn't allow me to use, like an adapter like this that allows me to plug in my MIDI keyboard. If I just use that single adapter for audio on my iPad, I'm unable to be able to use a MIDI keyboard. So I'm not saying you have to get this adapter, but if you're gonna get into iPad music production, you definitely want to have at least an adapter that allows you to plug in a MIDI keyboard, and then something that also allows you to use headphones, or if you want to go out into maybe like an audio interface, because that's what I do actually sometimes. With this, I may start making beats on the iPad, but then I go into the audio interface with one of those wide stereo adapters, and that allows me to just get to work. Now, sometimes I may actually plug directly into the iPad Pro with this USB-C cable from my Personas 26C audio interface. I also showed that one on the last video. Most of the time, if I do that, I'm sampling and I have no need necessarily for a MIDI keyboard, so I may just be doing everything like in Beatmaker, and that's going to be really the only time you may see me plug directly into the iPad as far as going from my iPad to the audio interface. And as you can see here, there goes that stereo wide cable. And then if I'm running audio to my audio interface, I'm just going to plug right in to the adapter, and then I would just go right into the audio interface like so. And last but not least, don't forget your MIDI controller. Now you're ready to go. So that's going to be it as far as what I'm using to create beats on the iPad Pro here in 2020. Still pretty much the same. One other app that I'm gonna throw out there for y'all, if you love sampling, is going to be the Koala app. That's gonna be $4.99, I believe. But it allows you pretty much to either sample external sounds, or if you wanna drag and drop your samples into the Koala sampler as well. If you want to drag and drop your samples into Koala Sampler, you have that option as well. And a lot of creators like it because it reminds them of either like the SP404 or even like a pocket operator, just for the sampling and effects capabilities of the Koala Sampler. So I definitely would recommend checking that one out. Maybe I'll do a video on that one at some point as well. But as I said before, in the description, I'll go ahead and leave the iPad Music Production 2020 video that I did, in addition to like the Beatmaker 3, the Getting Started with Korg Gadget video. I'm gonna leave that in the description section as well. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at d._majormusic. Follow me on Twitter at d.mme. What are you using to create beats on your iPad? Are you new to music production on an iPad or in general? What are you using to make your beats? Let me know in the comment section. And until next time, it's your boy D. And I'm out.